Research Commander Zixtel adjusted their sensory membrane as the cloaked observation vessel settled into low Earth orbit. Their iridescent scales shifted from anticipation purple to focused blue as they addressed their crew of 8 elite chronobiologists. Let me be clear. Zixtel's voice resonated through their neurocommunication field. This is not a standard observation mission. Earth has been classified as a death world for good reason. Our last 3 attempts at studying this species ended in unexpected ways. Senior researcher Vendar raised a tendril. Commander, with respect, why waste resources studying pre-FTL primitives? They haven't even established a permanent presence on their moon. Zixtel projected the latest sensor readings onto the ship's neural network. Because Vendar, they shouldn't exist. Look at these readings. Oxygen levels that would be toxic to most sentient species. Gravity that should crush their calcium-based frames. Temperature variations that would kill most carbon-based life, yet they thrive. The crew absorbed the data in stunned silence. Junior researcher Kylra's scales flickered with confusion. But their technology is primitive. Chemical rockets. Combustion engines? They're barely past their industrial age. That's exactly why we're here, Zixtel replied. The Council wants to understand how they've survived long enough to develop any technology at all. Our mission is to observe their hunting practices. If we can understand how they became apex predators on a death world, we might understand what makes them so resilient. The observation team deployed to their first target, a wilderness region humans called the Amazon rainforest. Their channelonic biosuits adjusted instantly to the riot of green and brown surrounding them. The humidity made Zixtel's scales itch, but the readings were fascinating. By the void, Vendar whispered, analyzing the local fauna. Everything here is trying to kill everything else. They tracked their first human subject, a local hunter moving through the undergrowth with unsettling silence. The Federation database had classified humans as endurance predators, but watching them in action was something else entirely. The human moved with a fluid grace that defied their supposedly primitive nervous system. They navigated by sight, sound, and something else, a pattern recognition that their equipment couldn't quite quantify. Hours passed as they observed the human tracking a large mammal through the dense forest. No energy weapons, no sonic stunners, just simple tools and that unwavering focus. Impossible, Kylra muttered, checking their sensors again. Their core temperature should be critical in this humidity, but they're maintaining homeostasis through surface moisture evaporation. It's elegant. The hunt reached its climax as the human finally closed in on their prey. What happened next made even Zixtel's scientific detachment waver. The human hadn't just tracked the animal. They'd guided it, herded it, used its own survival instincts against it until it was too exhausted to fight back. This isn't hunting, Security Officer Mexuon observed, their combat-enhanced senses on full alert. This is psychological warfare on a primal level. The team watched in silence as the human efficiently processed their kill, wasting nothing. But it was what happened next that truly disturbed them. The human looked up, scanning the forest with those simple binocular eyes, and for a moment, just a moment, seemed to look directly at their cloaked position. They smiled. Back on the ship, Zixtel composed their preliminary report to the Council. How could they explain what they'd witnessed? How could they convey the implications of a species that had turned their planet's brutal conditions into advantages? Recommendation, they wrote, their scales now a troubled shade of grey. Upgrade human classification from pre-FTL primitive species to potential strategic concern. These beings haven't merely survived their death world, they've mastered it. And they're looking to the stars with that same hunter's patience. Additional note, their space program, which we dismissed as primitive. We were wrong. They're not advancing slowly because they can't do better. They're advancing methodically, testing each step, learning their prey's patterns. And we, Aethir, are their next target. As Zixtal finished their report, Earth's night side rotated into view. Cities sparkled like predator eyes in the darkness, and for the first time in their long scientific career, they felt a chill in their thermal core. The humans weren't just survivors. They were something far more dangerous. They were persistent. The Siberian winter howled around Research Commander Zixtal's observation pod, their thermal regulators straining against the brutal cold. 2 weeks had passed since their Amazon expedition, and the Council had demanded more evidence of human hunting capabilities in extreme conditions. Thermal readings at -40 degrees, Vendar reported, their scales now a pale blue to match the endless white landscape. No sensible species would hunt in these conditions. Yet there she was. Their subject, a human researcher named Katya Volkov, moved through the snow with practiced ease, tracking a pack of what local records called wolves. Her own pack of domesticated wolves followed her lead, a detail that had sent ripples of disbelief through the Federation scientific community. They've domesticated apex predators, Kyler observed, their scientific detachment slipping. Not just domesticated, partnered with them. They hunt alongside creatures that should be hunting them. Zixtal watched as Katya checked her simple mechanical devices, compass, binoculars, radio. The Federation had dismissed human technology as primitive, but watching her adapt these basic tools to survive in conditions that would kill most spacefaring species was unsettling. Notice her breathing pattern, Security Officer Mexuon pointed out. She's regulating her core temperature through controlled respiration. Their bodies shouldn't be capable of such precise homeostasis, yet. The hunting party moved silently through the frozen landscape. Katya communicated with her wolf companions through subtle gestures and quiet vocalizations, displaying a level of interspecies cooperation that defied Federation understanding of predator psychology. New contact, Vendar announced. Large heat signature, moving northeast. Appears to be their target, a wounded elk separated from its herd. They watched as Katya coordinated with her wolf pack, positioning them strategically around the elk's escape routes. The wolves weren't just following commands, they were anticipating her strategy, working in perfect synchronization with their human partner. This isn't just hunting, Zixtal realized. This is strategic warfare using multiple species as tactical assets. They've turned an entire ecosystem into a weapon. The hunt itself was a masterclass in efficiency. Katya didn't waste energy in pursuit. She let her wolf partners do the running, while she maintained a steady, relentless pace. Hours passed, and still she moved forward, her breath fogging in the Arctic air. Her endurance levels shouldn't be possible, Kyler muttered, reviewing their biological scans. She's maintaining optimal core temperature in lethal conditions, while carrying equipment that's at least 20% of her body mass. The elk, despite its superior speed and strength, couldn't shake its pursuers. Every time it tried to rest, either Katya or her wolves would appear, forcing it to move again. The human hunter never rushed, never showed frustration, just maintained that same steady pace that seemed to define her entire species. They're called persistence hunters, Zixtal explained, but that term doesn't capture it. They don't just persist, they adapt, innovate, cooperate. They turn every disadvantage into a tactical advantage. When the elk finally collapsed from exhaustion, Katja's efficiency became almost mechanical. She processed the kill with practiced movements, sharing the meat with her wolf companions in what seemed like a ritual millions of years in the making. But it was what happened next that truly alarmed the observation team. Katja pulled out a device, what humans called a satellite phone, and began reporting detailed observations about the elk herd's migration patterns, wolf pack behaviors, and environmental conditions. She's not just hunting, Mexlone realized. They're combat tendrils extending in alarm. She's gathering data. They're studying their entire world with the same intensity they study their prey. Back in orbit, Zixtal added to their report. Human hunting behavior extends beyond mere survival. They've developed a systematic approach to understanding and dominating their environment that transcends their technological limitations. They don't just adapt to their world, they make their world adapt to them. As they watched Katja begin her long trek back to her research station, Zixtal couldn't shake a disturbing thought. Humanity's primitive technology wasn't a sign of limitation, it was proof of their patience. They didn't need advanced weapons or environmental suits. They turned their own bodies, their minds, and even other species into all the weapons they needed. Final observation. Zixtal added to their report. We may have gravely misunderstood human space exploration. We saw their slow, methodical approach as a sign of technological inferiority. But what if it's actually a sign of something far more dangerous? What if they're treating the galaxy itself as just another hunting ground? The observation pod lifted silently into the swirling snow, leaving Katja and her wolf pack below. She paused, looking up at the sky with those eerily perceptive eyes, and for a moment, Zixtal could have sworn she smiled, the same unsettling expression they'd seen in the Amazon, the expression of a predator who knew exactly where its prey was hiding. By the void, they've turned their artificial habitats into hunting grounds. Research Commander Zixtal transmitted to their team as they observed the sprawling metropolis of Tokyo from their cloaked observation post atop a skyscraper. Their subject today was Lieutenant Hideo Tanaka, a cybercrime investigator with the Tokyo Metropolitan Police. The Federation Council had specifically requested observation of human hunting behaviors in urban environments, and Zixtal was beginning to understand why. Look at how they've adapted. Vendar noted, their scales shifting to match the grey concrete and glass surrounding them. They've created an entirely artificial ecosystem, yet they hunt here with the same efficiency as in the wilderness. Lieutenant Tanaka moved through the crowded streets with predatory grace, his eyes constantly scanning digital displays and human faces. He wasn't tracking animal prints or scent trails. He was following the electronic spoor of his prey, a notorious data thief who'd been raiding corporate servers. Their technology is evolving faster than our models predicted, Kyldra reported, monitoring Tanaka's use of what humans called a smartphone. They're not just using tools anymore, they're creating new hunting grounds in digital space. The team watched as Tanaka coordinated with his team, directing them through the urban maze with tactical precision. He wasn't just following his target, he was herding them, using the city's surveillance systems and digital networks as his pack. Notice his stress indicators, Mexlon observed. Despite the sensory overload of this environment, his cortisol levels remain optimal. They've adapted to process massive amounts of information without biological strain. The hunt reached a critical phase as Tanaka's target made a desperate move, diving into the labyrinthine Tokyo subway system. To the observation team's amazement, the human hunter didn't rush in pursuit. Instead, he calmly descended into the underground network, coordinating with his team to seal off escape routes. Just like the wilderness hunters, Zixtal noted. They don't chase, they contain, control, and exhaust. The environment has changed, but the strategy remains. Hours passed as Tanaka methodically tightened the net around his prey. He used the city's own systems against the fugitive transportation networks, security cameras, digital payments. Every piece of technology that made the city function became a tool in his arsenal. They've weaponized their entire civilization. Vendar realized their scales now showing the deep purple of scientific breakthrough. Every advancement they make isn't just for survival or comfort, it's a potential hunting tool. The pursuit ended in a quiet internet cafe where the exhausted data thief had sought refuge. Tanaka didn't storm in with weapons drawn. He simply walked in, sat down next to his target, and smiled, that same unsettling expression the team had seen on other human hunters. Psychological dominance display, Mexlon noted. They don't just hunt bodies, they hunt minds. Back in their orbital station, Zixtol struggled to compose their latest report to the Council. How could they explain that humanity's seemingly chaotic urban developments were actually highly evolved hunting territories? Critical update, they wrote. Human technological development must be reassessed. What we perceived as primitive infrastructure is actually a sophisticated predatory network. They haven't just adapted to artificial environments, they've engineered them to enhance their hunting capabilities. More concerning, they continued, is their ability to transfer hunting behaviors across domains. Physical pursuit, digital tracking, psychological warfare. They seamlessly combine these methods in ways our species' classification systems never anticipated. As night fell over Tokyo, the city transformed into a glittering web of lights and data streams. Zixtol watched Tanaka begin processing his latest catch, not through traditional interrogation, but through a complex dance of technology and psychology that would extract every bit of useful information. Final observation, Zixtol added. We must revise our understanding of human space exploration. Their crude rockets and orbital stations aren't signs of technological limitations. They're the first steps of a species learning to hunt in a new environment. And based on their pattern of adaptation, we must assume they will master space, just as they've mastered every other hunting ground they've encountered. The team prepared to move to their next observation site, but Zixtol lingered, watching the city pulse with electronic life. In the streets below, Lieutenant Tanaka looked up at the night sky, his eyes reflecting the stars with an intensity that made the alien researcher's scales ripple with unease. The humans weren't just reaching for the stars, they were stalking them. Research Commander Zixtol's observation pod hovered silently near Earth's International Space Station, their scales reflecting the stark contrast between light and shadow in the vacuum of space. They shouldn't be here, Vendar transmitted, watching human spacewalkers performing maintenance on the station. Their bodies aren't designed for void exposure. Their technology is centuries behind standard Federation environmental systems. Yet there they were, humans in primitive pressure suits, working with practiced ease in an environment that should have terrified any rational species. The team was observing Dr. Yuki Nakamura, a space station engineer, as she coordinated a complex solar panel repair. Look at her neural patterns, Kyra noted with fascination. No panic response, no stress spikes. She's treating the most hostile environment known to carbon-based life as just another hunting ground. They watched as Yuki manipulated tools with precise movements, her tethered form dancing through the void with unsettling grace. When a piece of equipment started drifting away, she calculated its trajectory instantly, using the station's structure to redirect her momentum and retrieve it. They're adapting to three-dimensional hunting, Mexlon observed. Their primitive bodies shouldn't be capable of such spatial awareness, but they're already moving like void-born species. The repair operation continued for hours. Other humans would rotate out, returning to the station when their suit's resources ran low. But Yuki remained, monitoring, coordinating, hunting down every potential flaw or weakness in the station's systems. Their space program isn't primitive, Zixtal realized. It's methodical. They're learning to hunt in space the same way they learn to hunt on land, one patient step at a time. The Federation Council chamber fell silent as Zixtal concluded their presentation. The gathered representatives' bioluminescence flickered with varying shades of concern and disbelief. "You mean to tell us," High Councillor Drenthar's voice resonated through the neural network, "that this pre-FTL species represents a potential threat to galactic stability?" "Not a threat," Zixtal corrected, their scales shifting to urgency red. "A certainty. Humans aren't just surviving in space, they're hunting there. Every satellite, every space station, every probe they launch is marking territory, learning patterns, developing new techniques." The research teams compiled observations played across the chamber's neural displays. Humans hunting in rainforests, Arctic wastes, urban jungles, and now the void of space. Each environment showed the same pattern: observe, adapt, persist, dominate. Their technology appears primitive because we're measuring it against the wrong criteria, Vendar added. They don't need advanced environmental suits because they've adapted to extreme conditions. They don't need faster-than-light travel because they've evolved to pursue their prey across any distance, no matter how long it takes. Consider their current space exploration pattern, Kyler continued. Mars colonies, lunar bases, asteroid mining operations. They're not just expanding. They're establishing hunting blinds, observation posts, supply caches. They're treating the solar system exactly like their ancient ancestors treated their terrestrial hunting grounds. The council chamber erupted in concerned communication signals. High Councillor Drenthar raised their primary appendage for silence. "Your recommendation, Research Commander." Zixtal's scales shifted to the deep blue of absolute certainty. "We must revise our entire approach to human civilization. They're not primitive, they're patient. They're not technologically limited, they're methodically expanding their hunting territory. And most importantly, they're about to realize they're not alone in the galaxy." "And when they do?" someone asked. "When they do," Zixtal replied, projecting an image of Earth's glittering cities, its orbital installations, its spreading influence across its solar system, they will do what they've always done. They will observe. They will adapt. They will persist. And eventually, they will hunt. The council chamber darkened as representatives processed this disturbing assessment. But Zixtal had one final observation to share. "There's something else," they transmitted. "In every environment we studied, at least one human looked directly at our cloaked position and smiled. They can't see us, they can't detect us, but somehow they know we're watching, and they're not afraid. They're waiting." As the council debated emergency measures and containment protocols, Zixtal watched Earth rotating slowly in the chamber's main display. Cities sparkled across its night side like countless predator eyes, and somewhere down there, humans were looking up at the stars with that same patient, hungry smile. The galaxy had been a safe, orderly place for millions of years. But now a new kind of hunter was reaching for the stars. One that had evolved on a death world. One that had turned every environment it encountered into a hunting ground. One that had mastered the art of endless pursuit. And they were coming.